Hello, this is Teresa and I'm from quiltandsew.com and we're quilting in St. George, Utah. Quilt as you go on your long arm. This is just a recap of what we did today at TLC, that's for Teresa's Long Arm Club. What we've done is we put a back on our long arm and then we basted down our top, and it's made out of Cuddle. We've got the cute little farm animals. People in the class did the stippling, and I'm going to roll it forward so you can see the stippling, and then when we get down to closer to the bottom, we quilt and turned our fabric and stitched our fabric on. Our cute little animal prints, and we did a spacer. And all this is we take a strip of fabric, we did a 3-inch piece of fabric, and you put it on like so. We stitch down the piece and then we flip it over, and then we do the same thing with the blue. This is Shannon Fabrics, and what they've done is they've got the cute little pig, the sheep, and the cow. They did it with smaller pieces, and I didn't want to have to do all these little tiny pieces, so I cut it out of the Cuddle cow fur, and then we used our wash away and we just pinned it on top, and I have gone through and zigzagged all the Cuddle down, and now we're going to put a couching foot on, and we're going to couch it. And I've done the cow already, so you can see how there's a little separation with the little black yarn. And then I couched on a long piece of yarn and braided it for the tail. And that way I didn't have to use these teeny tiny pieces. So we're gonna put the foot on, and then we'll do a little bit of couching. So this, I didn't have any Chanel white, so I'm gonna have to use this thinner yarn, and I think it splits a little bit, so instead of doing a straight line, we're going to do some curlicues kind of to reminisce about like sheep. So we're just going to circle around and go all the way around our sheep. You see how I hit that right there? We're going to have to fix that. We're going to snip this yarn right here and here, and then we'll be able to finish doing this piece, and then I'll have to re-loop it. With couching, it's the same as rule work. You have to go slow. I had to trim the thread and the yarn, and now I'm having to re-thread my needle and start again. And so see how I have this looped around like this right here? You want to, when you're couching, kind of pull your yarn out and kind of puddle it so that it's just up here on your bed and not all tied up where it's going to get caught. We cut the top thread, however, I did not cut the bottom. And so we are going to have to go grab that bobbin thread and bring it up, because right now it's attached to the back of the quilt. So there's my bobbin, and we are going to pull it out. I'm not worried about having it looped because I'm just using it to pull up my yarn. We're going to have it puddled instead of tangled into a knot this time. And we're going to come up. The other thing is I have batting in here, and I wanted it extra poofy and soft. And when you're doing something extra poofy and soft, you sometimes have to stop and start. And the only thing about stopping and starting is when you do stop your machine, you do want to turn it off. And so we're just going to pull the yarn through. So we lassoed that yarn, put it through, and you can see this is where I ended. I don't know if you can see too well because it's just really light yarn, but we're going to come back and we're going to want to start over that. It doesn't make it any poofier, it just will secure the ends. So we're going to turn it on, and we're going to start to roll around again on the edges, and this time I'm going to go a little bit slower so that, and you can see how that yarn is sneaking in there, and so I want to readjust it, and I want to trim off this edge so it doesn't accidentally get caught up into the couching. So we're just going to start again. We're just going to go over that black edge so we can't see it. And you see how my foot is kind of pausing a little bit? It is actually catching a little bit onto this wash away material I'm using. So going slower is the better policy when you're doing something odd on your long arm. Odd but fun. So now we're down to the sheep's foot, and we're just going to cover up that black with this white, and then we're going to connect the two pieces together and go over it just a little bit so they're nice and secure. And we're going to pull it through and cut our yarn, and we're actually cutting the top thread as we're doing the yarn. And then we do pull the thread out of the foot, and we're going to come back and needle down and needle up to get our bobbin thread and pull that up and cut that off as well. Now I've got my yarn ready for my pig, and I have this really cute, the Chanel yarn that I like, and it's variegated, but it's got this orange and purple in there, and I just can't have an orange and purple pig. So we've stopped and clipped a couple of it. So now I have two colors of pink, which I think is going to be cute. But that means that I might have to stop and redo these. And it just takes a little bit longer. Of course, I'm going to make it difficult if I possibly can. And so we're going to lasso this yarn again. And I'm holding both sides of the yarn and the top thread. I needle down and needle up, and then I'm going to use the top thread to pull my thread from the bottom up, and we're just going to pull that yarn through the hole. And it's pretty tight, but it's going to work. All right, so I want to use as much of this as possible, so I'm going to sneak that tail, so I have a little tiny tail, and then this is the yarn that's going to come through. We're going to use as much as we can, and then we'll loop another piece. So we're just going to stitch it down. Because this is a fatter piece of yarn, I don't have to do that circular motion, so it's going to go further. I'm going to pause for a second and find my scissors and trim off the start. And I'm going to pull this because you can tell I wasn't watching my ends, and it might be a little tight. We'll see. Oh, it went through. Let's do a little tuck. There's a little more dimension to the pig. There's a little ear, up and around. And you can see I'm going to run out of yarn. We might be able to make it. We'll see. I'll come down and around and up and over. And then I'm going to keep stitching clear to the end, and then come back and stitch that down a little bit. Okay, so we made it all the way around. Cute little pig. So now I want to do the curly Q on the tail, and I want to do it the bright pink. So we're going to load this one in. I'm going to go ahead and cut my threads the regular way so we can fish, needle down, needle up to grab that bobbin thread and cut that. And then we're going to put our tail, start it right there. So I'm going to load another piece of yarn in, and we're just going to needle down, needle up. So I have my two threads in my hand, my top and my bottom. Come back to that same point, and I go ahead and lasso my yarn, needle down, needle up. Using my threads, I'm going to pull that yarn through the hole in the foot, and then Again, we're going to want to use all that dark pink, so I'm going to scooch it down until I have just a small yarn tail. That looks about center. So we're going to stitch. Oh, and it hungered up again. We're going to cut that off so it's out of our way, and we're just going to spiral our little tail. You can see I got it knotted, and here's my yarn, and my thread. My yarn's fine, but my thread is not. So I've got to sneak it back up so that there's no space that hasn't been stitched. And we're gonna rethread the top. Our bobbin is still connected underneath, and so we don't have to rethread the bottom, and we don't have to lasso our thread because it's already in the hole of the foot, the couching foot. But we're gonna rethread our needle, and I'm gonna go a little slower. Being on video, even though I do this quilting all the time, being on video makes me a little nervous, and so I try to hurry a little bit too fast when I'm doing it in front of other people. Okay, here we go. I'm going to just turn it on. We're going to spiral that little tail. Go ahead and cut this thread off so that I don't see it. And you can tell my thread is white. It doesn't really matter because it sinks into the stitching, and so you don't need to worry about that. So we're going to come back up and around, and we're going to end the tail here. I'm going to cut that off, being careful not to cut my thread so I can end it. I'm going to pull it off and stitch back up and go back around because I forgot to stitch down the very start. Nice. So we're going to come back off and do that guy. Okay, and then he's done. So now we'll turn off the video and pull this plastic. Well, it's not really plastic. It's a glue that is a wash away. We use it in embroidery all the time. Okay, so we're just going to tear this off. The machine out of the way so we can see what's happening. And then we're going to just pull that there. So because it is a glue, when yes, there is a little tiny bit of glue left underneath the stitching, but as soon as this is washed the first time, that's just going to disappear and you won't have any of that left. And here's our little sheep. And our head for our little guy here. So isn't that adorable? Your little sheep, your cow, and your pig. It's a cute little tail. So we'll pull it off and trim it and get it bound, and then we'll get a picture out of it.